Starting recording. Chris, please take us away.
Thank you, Sasha. I appreciate it. I'm thrilled to be back at your meetup. I think your gathering was the first virtual meetup I ever did, which was way before COVID happened. And you were like, yeah, I got this group and we do everything online. I'm like, wow, I wonder if I can figure out how to do stuff online. And that was a learning for me. So I'm thrilled to be back. So good evening, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. I'm excited to see you. Lots of familiar faces, some that are new. And tonight we are going to be diving into organizational impediments, right? What the heck are organizational impediments and what can we do about them? So I am going to share a couple of little slidey things to set the stage. So impediment. Right? An impediment is anything that's slowing the team down, anything that is making it harder for the team to accomplish their goals and to do their work. And Scrum Masters, right, are like the impediment ninjas, right? Working with the team, helping the team learn how to overcome their impediments, supporting them on that journey. And it's all beautiful, right? So as
once fill us some coffee.
There we go. And so so far, so good. A run-of-the-mill impediment is the sort of thing where if the members of the team, the Scrum Master, the product owner, the developers work together, they're going to be able to overcome that problem. They're going to be able to get themselves back on track. And, that's kind of like the bread and butter, right, for Scrum Masters, is helping teams overcome those run-of-the-mill impediments. And then there are organizational impediments. And an organizational impediment is typically something that the root cause is outside of the team. And the solutions are going to be things that the team members, including a Scrum Master, could not possibly implement all on their own. And so typically organizational impediments will involve things like the organizational structure, right? Maybe something about the org structure is actually making it hard for teams to deliver value. Organizational impediments could include things like tooling that we use, right? Maybe, we've got this tool set that we're using and it's actually kind of gets in the way and makes it hard for stuff to get done. It could be policies and procedures. It could be politics. Really anything that is kind of in the structures of the organization is likely to be, an organizational style impediment. And typically an organizational impediment will affect more than one team. Typically it is something that is outside of the team. And typically it is something that Scrum Master team members are going to have to work with people in the organization who hold power in order to resolve. And so tonight we're going to be diving into a three-step approach for diagnosing organizational impediments that I have to say I learned this approach back in my very first career. So my very first career, I was an auto mechanic. And as I was an apprentice and, started working, my first gig was at a Buick dealer in Hammond, Indiana. And the senior mechanic I was working with, his name was Kevin. And he said, okay, the first thing you need to know are the 3 C's. I was like, the 3 C's? And he said, yeah. He said, every car that comes into us, we have to capture the 3 C's, and I want you to write the 3 C's back on the back of every ticket you work on. So, okay, well, what are they? And he said, well, the first one is the complaint, right? This is what the customer is unhappy about, and this is what they're experiencing. And so complaints are the pains that in my case as a mechanic, that the car owner was having, right? What are their pain points? What are they suffering? Now, very often, both with auto repair and diagnosing organizations, the people that you talk to will not lead with their true complaint. They will come to you with what they think the problem is. right? So we would have people who would come to us and say, oh, my muffler bearing is loose. And so your muffler bearing is loose. Why do you think your muffler bearing is loose? Oh, well, every time I go over a bump, I hear a loud thump under the car. Ah, so your complaint is when you go over a bump, you hear a loud thump under the car. Yeah, I need a new muffler bearing, right? Okay, they think they need a muffler bearing, but their complaint, right, is loud thump under the car. So first C is getting real clear. What are the pains? What are the symptoms, right? And all too often, both in car repair and in organizations, people will come to you with what they think the solution is, right? Oh, we need to hire more engineers. Why do you think we need to hire more engineers? Oh, well, stuff is taking too long to get done. Oh, so things aren't getting done as quickly as you would like them to get done. Yeah, okay, that's the complaint. The next C is the cause, right? So here's where we have to put our diagnostician hat on. We can't just take things at face value, right? I can't just, go to the parts counter and get a muffler bearing and go and install it. Because what if that's not actually the problem? And so as a diagnostician, right, I have to investigate. And sometimes there's layers to this thing, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, I see this problem, right? I see what's going on, right? The muffler's actually hitting the bottom of the floor, right? Oh, that's the problem. The muffler's loose or something like that. It's like, well, yeah, but if we dig further, we might say, well, why is the muffler loose? If I look a little farther, I say, oh my goodness, actually the whole engine is flopping around every time I, give it a little gas. And it's like, oh, the muffler's loose because the motor mount's broken, right? So yeah, I found one problem, but it may not have been the root cause. So I had to dig deeper and say, well, why is that happening, right? Oh, because the motor mount's broken. Well, why is the motor mount broken? Is there some other deeper problem that's causing that? And maybe the answer is, well, no, that's the root cause, right? Same thing in an organization, right? Like, right, we shouldn't just rush out and hire more engineers and say, okay, well, things are taking longer than we'd like to get done. Well, why are they taking so long? Oh, well, because there's so much to do, right? We just need more people to do it. Oh, well, why is there so much to do? Well, because we're pursuing 20 things. They're all super important. Oh, interesting. So maybe the problem is we're pursuing too many things. Why are we pursuing too many things? Oh, well, because the CEO gave us these, 12 strategic objectives that we have to achieve this year. And if we don't, none of us will get our bonuses, right? And all 12 of us VPs all have a different objective that we've been assigned, right? So we've got the organization working on all 12. Oh, I see. So we're working on too many things because the VP's bonuses are tied to whether or not their objective gets worked on, which is because of a thing that the CEO put in place. Right. Root cause might be the CEO doesn't understand the value of limiting work in progress and its ability to actually help us get more done. So cause, right? There's this diagnostic work of figuring out what's the root cause. And then finally, the third C is correction, right? Like, okay, now that we think we know the root cause, what sort of intervention are we going to come up with, right? It's like, well, we're going to have to fix the broken muffler brackets, but we also definitely have to fix that broken motor mount, right? Or maybe in the organization, it's like, hey, we're going to have some coaching conversations with that CEO and maybe do some like little visualizations or exercises with them to help them see how, pursuing all those objectives, even though they all seem super important, is actually limiting their organization's ability to get the most important stuff done. So there we go, the 3 C's. So let's get in and play with it here. So in a moment, we are done with slideware. So in a moment, I'm going to send you off to a breakout room, and your breakout room will have a number. Let me make sure I get this right. There we go. So if I was in breakout room 6, I would click into the link in chat. They're not there yet for team 6. And I would find a worksheet that looks like this. And at the top is a scenario, a situation, right? So this one happens to say, the organization has recently adopted Scrum and formed cross-functional teams. Yay. The reporting structure hasn't changed. Programmers report to engineering managers and ultimately to the VP of engineering. Testers report to QA managers under the VP of quality. The performance review process, which is overseen by the VP of HR, is based on achieving individual goals, which fold into departmental goals led by the VPs of each department. The testers are being measured by how many bugs they report. Programmers are being measured against progress towards an infrastructure rewrite that the VP of engineering sees as vital. The individual goals that the team members have are not aligned with the goals that the product owners have. The VP of product is really frustrated by the slow rate of delivery from the Scrum teams and doesn't understand why Scrum isn't working, right? So this is a situation, this is a scenario. Your team will have some situation or scenario like this that you'll read. And then you'll move on to identifying complaints, right? When you read through that scenario, what do you think the pain points are, right? And I look through this and I see, well, gosh, it sounds like the VP of product isn't happy because, you know, product goals aren't moving forward quickly. And it also sounds like, you know, anyone who's trying to make Scrum work in this organization is probably not going to be real happy because the goals of the individuals are not aligned, right, with the goals of the team and product. So those might be some of the complaints. And they would say, oh, well, what are the causes? And this is where you and your teammates get to kind of think about what's going on in the scenario and think like, oh, what's leading to that, right? What are some of the root causes? In this particular scenario, it sounds like we've got some misalignment, right, in terms of people's reporting structure and the goals of the organization, right? And then, okay, well, what sort of correction could we try? And there's space in here to, you know, quickly try to come up with possibly 3 different interventions. You don't have to think each one of them out real thoroughly, but, you know, you might say, oh, well, we could revamp the performance review process. Oh, okay. Oh, wait, no, we could have the QA folks and the engineering folks actually all report up through the same organization. Oh, okay, we could do that, right? Or, you know, maybe we should fire the VP of HR. Okay, we could fire the VP of HR. So we get at least 3 ideas. And then we're going to talk about them and, you know, which one of these do we think is the most promising? And then describe, you know, how would we go about initiating this, right? What work would we have to do in order to kind of implement the solution and get it going? So you're going to get to go through that arc of identifying complaints, trying to identify root causes, and ultimately coming up with your recommended intervention, your recommended corrections for that situation. Questions before I turn you loose to try it?
Chris, do we have a link?
There will be links in the chat momentarily.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions. So now you're going to get some significant time to work on this. I'm going to give you 30 minutes in your breakout room. And when we come back, each team is going to present, right, their scenario, what their 3 C's are, and we'll have a little bit of time to discuss it. I will drop in on each team, probably in the first 5 minutes, just to kind of make sure you're off to a good start. And at any time, if you need help, there's a little request help button down at the bottom. Click on that, and Sasha or I will drop into your breakout room and render assistance. So let me drop the links in the chat. There they are. So when you get in your breakout room, take a look at the top of the Zoom window. Right now, it probably says Zoom meeting. But when you get in your breakout room, it'll say like room 1, room 2, room 3. So once you know what room you're in, click on the corresponding link in the chat. That will open the document with your scenario. And together, your team can edit that document and come up with your 3 C's. All right. Like I say, I'll drop in on you probably in the first 5 minutes to see you're off to a good start.
In the meanwhile, let me pause the recording.
And then And then after you've shared your team's scenario, what did you identify as complaints? What did you think the root causes were? And what correction ultimately did you land on? So you don't have to share all the corrections you thought about, but whichever intervention you think is like, this would be the best place to start. Love to hear about that, and how you think you would go about doing it. So team one, would you like to start us off?
I believe that was us. Yes. So the scenario for team one, you had a front end team where and a little bit of extrapolation here, but somebody in sales and marketing sold something that didn't exist yet, and they had a deadline to deliver by the end of the quarter. They had dependencies on the platform team, and they were struggling to get to cooperate with the platform team because the platform team had its own executive, which was driving the priority of their own work, and there was no communication going on there. So let me go to my notes. So for complaints there, we have that each team feels that their own work is not prioritized by the other. In fact, the platform team feels that the front end team is interrupting their ongoing work. And if the platform team is knee deep in a particular type of work, in my own experience, so you have a platform that's about to fail, and they have to re-platform up to a new technology because something else went end of life. So they have a deadline there too, and so we have a front end director and we have a platform director. One of the key observations we had is that there's nobody from product managing priority calls. Each of their priorities is being kept in a silo. There's no negotiation, no communication, working to manage these unaligned priorities. And there's no communication. I mean, you look in the three, there's transparency, inspection, and adaptation. There's no adaptation going on. These teams are basically arguing with each other more than they're trying to work together. So the next level down, each exec believes that their own objectives are more important. There's no peer at the executive level working to manage priority. There's no value-based guidance to the projects in the roadmap. And going back to what I said earlier, sales or marketing sold something that not only was it not built, but there was no reliable platform to put it on, essentially. We had a couple of different ideas. I'm sorry?
I think that was just some random noise that came through.
Okay. We had a couple of ideas, but the one we spent most of our time on was starting with the big meeting. In our minds, it was the CEO that was intervening here. So got everybody together, sales, platform, front end, execs. They have to look at this, get all of the scope of the work on the board, even if it's a little like a mini PI planning, PI event. Do the red yarn in between things to get the dependencies scoped out and get a plan in place. And to the question of what a Scrum Master would do, it would be getting a PO and a product owner in place, creating a backlog, start creating some goal-oriented sprints, and also try to blend the teams in at least a minimum capacity. If the front end team could get at least one platform developer, but I making things up, I don't know how big the work is, but at least one, you can create your vertical slices. You can create a front end and the platform work in the same sprint, and then just start cycling that way. And then the problems that might arise there: lack of agreement to cooperate, lack of participation or negotiation by the execs. The teams would be unfamiliar with the Scrum framework, since it sounds like that they would be starting cold here, or have an improper Scrum implementation. Refusal to participate. Nobody wants to cross to a different domain. And even if you blend the teams, each team would be, each silo would still be working on their own priorities. So that was kind of it in the big nutshell.
Nice. Give it up for team one. Nice. Nice job. Nice job. I think we'll hear from each of the teams and then we'll kind of open it up for like broad general comments or, any kind of discussion that comes up. So team two, your time to shine. Tell us about your scenario, complaints, causes, and correction.
Yeah, who wants to go? Maybe I can go.
Okay.
Yeah, so the scenario was, briefly scenario was CEO was upset because the bug slipped into the product and it was in the critical, it was a critical bug. So we went through the scenario and these are the complaints that we came up with. These were the complaints we saw. One critical bug slipped through in the product. The CEO says, he complains, can we deliver the high quality products on time? Because he says, he thinks that it did not fix, it did not got tested or critical bug got slipped, but it was not in time also. So he thinks that was the case. Went after QA VP versus going to the Scrum team to work through the problem. Okay, he said, hey, look, you need to go and fix this because the market reputation may have jeopardized it. VP of QA says, this is out loud thinking, the one in blue color. I lose the power when I can't control what my people do, and I'm held accountable for quality of the product. So that's what VP of QA thinks, and now he is after the root cause analysis. And these are some more complaints that we saw, we can see through. Response with a local optimization versus global optimization. He thinks like that. A response, development team is going slower as a result. Code is delivered versus product increment due to the lack of QA, proper QA. VP of engineering, lack of trust. He thinks there is a lack of trust, a concern about the job security versus jointly working to improve. So, meaning we should work as a rather cross-functional team to improve, but there is a lack of trust. And he's also concerned that the Scrum experiment may jeopardize or degenerate it, or it may not work, things. Concerned about that the product efforts will move slow or too slow. VP of product thinks and complains that he has concern about the Scrum experiment may degenerate. He also thinks like that. And the Scrum team thinks, and they have a complaint that we are no longer working as a team. So how can we deliver in iteration, continuously improve, or value these Scrum ceremonies? The cause that we saw is why this happened, critical bug happened. It slipped into the product which was shipped. QA did not ensure proper testing. They were not part of the Scrum team, and probably iteration was getting over and definition of done was not met. Scrum team did not meet the definition of done. Definition DoD was incomplete, probably edge cases or maybe security check or something like that, and the bug slipped. The QA did not knew that there was a part of the DoD was, it has to be included, that particular portion that needs to be included. So they did not test, and eventually it slipped. Work for the DoD and include it next time. This is one of the correction that we need. Yeah, so DoD needs to be updated and needs to be corrected. It requires, but however, it requires the special approval. So that's also correction that we require from the VP and heads also, as it's a critical to the team and critical to the product and also the organization where it belongs. Everyone needs to encompass the additional DoD. Example, it could be security policy check for each product, shippable product. DoD needs to be adopted and needs to be made transparent also over the cross-functional team. So this is, Chris, this is what we came up.
Nice, nice. Give it up for team two. Woo, 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 woo. Team two in the house. Nicely done. Nicely done. Team three, your time to shine. What was your scenario? And tell us about your analysis of it.
Would you all like me to run with that?
Yes, please. Don't forget to tell them that we created world peace.
We did, world peace, along with Pinky and the Brain. All right, so our scenario was
You're the best.
right, exactly. So to summarize, so there's two teams, one in Berlin and one in San Francisco. There's two products. There's two product owners. The development teams have similar skill sets. So programmers and testers with experience in C++, the products are C++ as the primary programming language. And there's one PO in Berlin and one PO in San Francisco. So that's setting the stage. So the challenge is the product owners are saying they're upset because progress is slow. And there are often mix-ups and miscommunications between the team members in different locations. The team members are now frustrated, and oftentimes the team members in one country are building something that breaks something built by the teammates in the other country. And just some general confusion about what tasks will be done in which location, duplicated effort, and they're not meeting their sprint goals. So we went through and kind of read the pieces. The complaints are not quite as obscure as I need my part of my muffler replaced. It's clear, right? So they're not meeting their sprint commitments. That's a complaint. They're confused about who does what, right? So there's the who's on first. And in some cases, the work that part of the teams are doing is breaking the stuff that other folks are doing. So digging into that a little bit in terms of the cause, well, we felt like the obvious first answer was, well, they're not communicating. If we together decide on the work to be done in the sprint, and then each individual person pulls in and assigns a piece of work to themselves, so it's very clear who's working on it, there's no ambiguity there. So there's not there. We felt like, so they're not coordinating. They've not established probably clear roles and responsibilities in the team. They might not be using a code repo or sort of normal programming best practices, branching merge to master, CI/CD. Probably not doing regression testing before they move things to a different environment. And it sounds like perhaps the developers, when they're assuming there are user stories, which is an assumption we made, we could be wrong there too, that the developers aren't picking up and assigning the stories to themselves, and so nobody knows who's working on what. And so a little bit deeper, right, is, well, why might that be? Well, so it seems like, again, communication. There's not clear, consistent communication channels. Perhaps not all the Scrum ceremonies are happening, right? So it seems like probably there's not a daily Scrum where everybody's talking about the work that they're doing to progress towards the sprint goal. It sounds like perhaps the product owners are not coordinating or communicating, and the Scrum Masters and the team members in general. So in the correction, I'll note that the knee-jerk reaction that I had was, well, just split it into two product teams. There's two products and two teams with two product owners. Just tell them to split it. And the suggestion that we came up with was, well, maybe bring it to the team and ask them if they feel like there might be other ways of working that would be easier, that would have less trumping on each other, and perhaps help them come to that conclusion. But really, it should be the team's conclusion, right? The Scrum Master is coaching, but not mandating who does what work. And then the strongly suggesting, if it's not happening, which it seems like it's not, that the daily Scrums are happening, and the content of the daily Scrums are effective in terms of conveying who's doing what work when, and if they need help from other people, and if it might impact the code that somebody else is working on, right? Just communicating and talking, and then adding, like, maybe even a team group chat where asynchronous communication can happen, right? We're not in the same time zones. We're not always working at the same time, but if we all have a shared place where we can communicate with each other, perhaps that would help reduce some of the challenges that we're seeing. So I think the summary we had was more self-management implemented by the teams, better open and clear communication channels, which would be facilitated by the Scrum Master. And then watch for areas where miscommunication might take place and circle back with that, perhaps as part of a retrospective.
Ooh, team 3 in the house. Give it up for team 3.
Awesome, Kathleen. Awesome. Yeah.
Nice analysis. And just as an aside, your knee-jerk reaction, it's what we did. So we actually got everyone together and we said, look, what would the learning, so first off, is this possible? So the situation was 2 products, 2 teams, but both teams were split between, Europe and here. And so we're like, hey, if we reorganize so that one product team was in Europe, one product team was here, how long would it take and how much would it suck for you all to like get up to speed on the new code base and the new product, right? And they all grumbled a little bit, but they're like, yeah, it wouldn't be tragic. And it was like, versus if we don't do that, you're going to keep dealing with this like communication issues. Like, how painful is that? And they're like, it's pretty painful and it's ongoing. There's no light at the end of that tunnel. So they swapped, and yeah, there was a little dip in productivity while people got up to speed on the new code bases and whatnot. And then after that, things got a lot better, which was super cool to see. But yeah, so it was good. Your knee jerk was really good. All right, team 3. Nicely done, team 3. Team 4.
Yeah. Karen, are you okay if I go? Okay. All right. I take it. Yes. All right, guys. So the scenario is a company has a secret sauce in one of its products written by Sue. And Sue happens to be a founder, which actually is not uncommon. I ran into some companies myself where the founder still, holds on to some very key code. So the company has 3 products, mostly implemented in Java, but the secret sauce is written in Prolog, a relatively obscure programming language. Each product has its own Scrum team. They all depend on the original Prolog code. Sue is the only person in the company who is familiar with that code. Yeah. The Scrum teams are frequently blocked, waiting on Prolog changes. Product owners are upset with new features and fixes taking very long. Members of the team often get into squabbles over who should get attention from Sue next. It is causing rivalry, resentment between the teams. Now, an interesting twist is Sue wants to retire, but she feels obligated to stay. She cannot abandon the company that she helped start. So that is the background. So the complaint is product owners are concerned fixes take too long, probably, cause one developer, a single developer for all 3 products, hence a bottleneck. Another is obscure programming language no one else knows. Prolog is a rare language. So correction is one was rewrite it in Java instead of Prolog, because Prolog it's hard to find skills, hard, maybe impossible, between the two. So rewrite it in Java instead of Prolog. That is option 1. Option 2, train more people in Prolog, since it is a missing skill in the company and actually in the industry as well. Third, now train, obviously it is Sue that has to train them. Third one is Sue trains others in Prolog, and there is going to be a learning curve. You won't, Prolog is a declarative language. I learned it long ago, and it's very different from regular languages. So there will be a learning curve there. So the third option is Sue trains others in Prolog, and during that learning period, that is in the interim, serialize the Prolog work to remove dependencies if possible, so that any team requires prologue work in a given sprint, it's only one team. So that kind of you remove the dependency there, and eventually Sue will train others in prologue. Now my guess is, since they are using prologue, they need prologue, and therefore Sue trains others in prologue. Now if that's not the case, okay, they can parallelly rewrite the whole thing in Java, and they have everybody in Java. So that's another possibility. But there are two things there: serializing the prologue work so that the dependency is actually eliminated, and that is our suggestion.
Ooh, give it up, give it up. Nice job, Team 4. Nice job. And so the backs, each one of these scenarios is, as I mentioned, based on actual real clients. And with this one, like, they were intellectually aware for quite some time that, like, having this, this person be the bottleneck was a significant problem. But what kept happening was they were always like, there was all these high priority things that needed to happen. And the fastest way in the moment to take care of the prologue part of it was always to just have Sue do it. Right. And so even though they were like, oh yeah, we should cross train, more people should learn prologue, there was never seemed like there was time for it. And pairing, Doug. So what ultimately worked, right, was we had this like get together and talk about how critical this was, because like Sue really wanted to retire. And so they decided the answer was this. They had to like force themselves not to go to the expedient solution every time there was something important. And so the way they did it was they revoked Sue's commit privileges on the source code repository. And so all prologue work had to be paired, and it had to be the other person, right, with hands on the keyboard. And they ultimately made some progress that way. That ended up, working for them. But yeah, very challenging. Very challenging.
Yeah. Not only that, if something had to happen to Sue, then the company is gone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this was a company that started out as a startup that was based on Sue's like PhD work, right? Came out of a university, and then just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew, right? So nicely done, Team 4. All right, we got one team left. Team 5, what you got for us? Tell us about your scenario and share your analysis.
Hello, ours had to do with a Scrum team creating marketing collateral, banner ads, and marketing emails. And their problem was waiting for approvals from the head of marketing and the company's staff lawyer. And the head of marketing likes to be hands-on, and they've instituted a process that requires them to sign off on all new marketing materials, so they keep an eye on quality. But since the marketing manager is always busy, sometimes things sit in their inbox for 4 or 5 days. And they have a lawyer that has an assistant who acts as a gatekeeper. The assistant prioritizes things based on urgency and risk, and incoming complaints and intellectual property are considered high priority, whereas the approval of marketing copy is considered to be fairly low priority. And in fact, their attitude is that they're annoyed that the marketing team is actually bothering them at all. The company has recently made a well-respected member of the marketing department the product owner for the teams, and this product owner has a good relationship with influential people throughout the company. The main complaint is the delays and frustrations due to gatekeeper and low priority of team's work. There's no streamlining of approval process and no transparency. The personnel in charge of approval backlog are blocking approval due to their personal opinion of low priority status, and there's no process or guidelines for approval. Our correction is we talked about creating a transparency via company dashboard visible to all departments, stakeholders, where status can be seen, and a group inbox for approval instead of one person, default person to approve if they're over the agreed time limit for all parties involved. And our third one was to create a regular team meeting to approve marketing material. And our solution for which ones we thought was best was the transparency via dashboard and having a default person for approval.
Yay, nicely done, team 5. Oh my goodness. Yeah, our poor marketing communications scrum team was just mired in process. And yeah, they ultimately did something very similar to what you're describing. They ended up getting the head of marketing to agree to give them essentially an SLA. And like you say, it was like, if they don't hear back from them within, I forget how long they had set it up to be, that by default, you know, they are free to move forward, right? So that that person wouldn't be a bottleneck. And then on the legal side, what they ended up doing was they said, well, look, we understand that we're trying to protect ourselves from accidentally doing something stupid, you know, with our marketing communications, but we never have. Right? This hasn't actually been a problem in the past. And so what they came up with was doing periodic reviews of stuff that had already happened and just getting advice and guidance, right? And it turned out that there was very little advice and very little guidance that came out of those reviews. And eventually the legal department like said, you know, if you're ever worried about anything, call us. So that's how that one ultimately resolved itself. Nice job, all 5 teams. Really, like, give yourselves a round of applause. My goodness. Yeah, would love to open it to general observations, conversations, questions, all of that. And someone had suggested sharing LinkedIn links in the chat. I think that's a great idea. So if you want to network with folks here, connect with me and others, feel free to drop your LinkedIn link in. So yeah, questions, comments, thoughts.
It is interesting, and I know a number of people said it in the chat earlier too. It's like, wow, these all sound really familiar. Like, it's like a universal set of problems. We don't communicate well. We create bottlenecks, either on purpose or by accident. Just funny.
Yeah. There are some patterns that show up over and over and over again. And what's interesting to me is even knowing about them and even being well schooled in like, oh, this is not a good pattern. It's so easy to slip into them, right? Like even at Agile Learning Labs, right? We've been working for years to like tighten up what we like commit to as our strategic objectives. Like we do a quarterly strategic, you know, planning session. And we're starting to get good, I think, about, you know, one achievable goal. But oh my goodness, it's so hard. There's so many things that would be good to do and seems like we should do. That limiting work in progress thing is so hard in practice.
Yeah. Well, and I think even more so when you have a team of optimists and enthusiasts, right? Like, but they're all cool.
We can do it.
Right.
Other observations or comments?
Let me take my facilitator hat off for a moment and become a participant. And there are a couple of points I would like to make, because there is always a temptation for us as Scrum Masters to jump into solutioning. And it's always it's not a good idea. So we want to slap ourselves on the wrist and say, our goal is to identify the problem and make the problem visible. If we are able to describe a problem, it's already 50% resolved. And then let the team figure it out. Let them do it, because if you have a teenage child, we don't tighten shoelaces for your teenage children. We want them to do this themselves. We don't want to become a Scrum mom. And there was another topic. We had this side conversations around because of all these different components and all these interdependencies. And it immediately triggers in me. I just recently found this wonderful book. It's called Team Topologies that covers a convey law that indicates a connection between the structure of your team and the architecture of your product, and vice versa. So I put a link into a chat for your convenience. So please take a look. It's a wonderful book. I had a lot of aha moments from reading it. Okay, I am putting my facilitator hat back on.
Hey, other thoughts, comments, questions? What do you think about the 3 C's approach?
I think that's an awesome structure which you can systematically think and resolve and present to others also. I agree with you. That's a Chris, great idea. Maybe I'll start implementing that in my new job whenever we get a chance. Even the current role, right? I mean, many development team things, Scrum of Scrum, Sprint Retro, these are all waste of time. But I think we need to educate them how it will benefit them for their own benefit. So unless we as Scrum champions educate them, motivate them, they're not going to join. That's one thing I observed. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
I like what Sasha was saying. Like, it's so easy to solve these things in the room here because the answer is let the teams manage themselves almost 90% of the time. Doing that and putting it in practice is the hard part. But yeah, like the answer to almost all the problems is let the teams figure it out. And so our jobs become, how do we best do that? How do we hold the thing up and allow them to see so they can fix it?
Nice. What else?
Chris, one thing I wanted to say is I worked at a garage in Southern California in the 90s, and we also heard problems about muffler bearings.
You guys got that from Car Talk. I'm not buying it.
Probably.
Muffler bearings and Knuten valves. Lots of problems with muffler bearings and Knuten valves.
Well, my Knuten valve always gets messed up with my soda and metafrad, so
Oh, yes. So
thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Chris. I need drop off. Thank you.
Doug.
I was just going to say, I was on team 2, and our situation was a little bit interesting. I can't remember who. I think it was Philip said something about laying the teams aside. In our scenario, the executives took away the power from the team, and it's kind of like, yeah, because the team didn't catch a critical bug. It doesn't say why, so it's impossible to know exactly what happened, but the CEO did the common interjecting. He goes, well, I want this fix, and he calls up the VP of quality. I mean, who else would you ask, right, if you're the CEO? And then the QA VP pulled all of his people off the team because he's scared he's going to lose his job. And then it just caused this, this domino effect of the VP of engineering being upset, VP of product being upset, and the team can't fix this stuff. I mean, maybe they can get together and go. It depends upon how approachable the CEO is. If it's a small company, I've had a couple of conversations where things are broken and need to be fixed. I don't know if they feel safe, but these things are hard to fix.
Yeah, this one, I wish I could say there was a super duper happy ending. So this is kind of a good size company, and we had the honor of kind of helping them adopt Scrum, right? Trained up the teams, coaching at leadership level, and boy, it went really great, right? What had motivated the company to do it was their last product release. Now this is like 15 years ago, but their last product release at that time had been really late. Just had the wrong feature set when it finally got to market, right? People were like, whatever, and had a lot of quality problems, right? And that had led them to go, we got to do something different. And there were some internal kind of agile evangelists who were like, we should be doing Scrum. And so we got to work with them. They organized into Scrum teams. They got really enthusiastic. They did really well, right? Their next release was, for all intents and purposes on time, right? They had a target date and they missed it by 2 weeks, which at the scale that they were talking, right, their previous release had been like over a year late. So 2 weeks, not too bad, right? And people loved that new version of the product, and the teams were happy. There was this one pretty nasty bug that got through, right? And then they had to do a hot fix, and it was a little embarrassing. So a real problem, right? No, don't want to play it down. But what ensued was this like cover your butt game between the VPs, and literally quality and engineering were separate verticals all the way up to the like C level, right? And that had been put in place because of quality issues they had in the past. And they're like, okay, we need to have independence here, right? And that like battle of wills between the QA person and QA VP and the engineering VP, it went on and on and on. And the CEO didn't intervene, just let it play out. And like the quality of their Scrum adoption was like, woo, we're doing great. Oh, things aren't so good. And then eventually the quality VP left.
Oh, that was a good solution.
And, well, it took a couple of years. And then they actually reorged to put like quality under engineering. And then all of a sudden things went right and came back up, and they went back to having quality people on the Scrum teams and all that. But it was a couple of years of people being really frustrated, and some of the best like agilists, those internal evangelists left, right? Because they were like, they saw a big problem, they had an idea, they worked like crazy and got it implemented, they saw great results, and then they saw it all blow up, and they were kind of like, we're out of here, right? So it was expensive for the organization.
Thank you for sharing what actually happened. That's it's interesting.
Yeah. And I think it was a case of, honestly, the CEO was busy with other things, right? Busy with like mergers and acquisitions type stuff, and just not interested in getting involved in the squabbling going on below, right? I'm not even sure how aware they were, right? Quite frankly.
Yeah, in a very similar situation, my CEO at my last employer was, don't come to me with a problem, come to me with a solution. And if you had two execs that couldn't agree, there wasn't a solution to be had.
Yeah, I would suggest go with more than one solution, one, so that they have a choice to decide instead of just one and only one solution. At least that's the way I approach.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you. They have Ram in Agile. I attended one of the Agile Safe Agilist courses, and they also suggest you don't have one solution. You have multiple solutions, not just two, multiple solutions, so that that which, if one solution fails, at least you have something to fall back on. Otherwise, you get stuck.
Correct. In SAFE, they call it, what do they call it? Set-based approach.
Yeah, exactly. In SAFE, they call it set.
You don't eliminate the hypothesis. You keep all of them and you run them in parallel, actually. You run them in parallel and then compare the results. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing up.
Absolutely. I'm an SPC. I should know these things.
So don't tell anybody. Set-based development goes way back before SAFE.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
but it's a good practice, and actually honestly a lot of the Agile frameworks and methods are really just collecting and curating good practices that have been around for, you know, a long
Years, many years.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. What else before we wrap this one and we turn it back over to Sasha?
So I'm sticking a little bit on this. The VP comes in, right? So an organizational transformation where you've helped shepherd these teams to this process of self-management, and they're doing really exceptionally well. And then you have a command and control event, right? And you know, as a scrum master or as a coach, your role is supposed to be like, call that out, have the hard conversations, right? Stand in front of the VPs or the CEOs and go, yeah, this isn't helpful. Like, why are you doing this? And oftentimes where Agile is born in an organization, those conversations, they're not ones that are even an option. So how do you help get past those sorts of obstacles, right?
It can be really challenging, right? And so when you have a situation where, oh, this, you know, this maybe this Scrum thing or this Agile thing was starting to flourish, and then there's a leadership change, and perhaps the new leader is more command and control, you know, approach. You know, one intervention that can be done is to like try to get some time with that person and say, hey, here's some history. We had these problems in the past. We're in the process of implementing this Scrum thing. Here's how it's going. It seems to be going really well. But in order for it to work, it needs this, this, and this in the environment, right? And I've noticed that you're implementing this, and this change, which is not compatible.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got a problem here, right? And would you advocate for us going back to how we worked before, which is compatible with these things that you want? Or, you know, gosh, this Scrum thing seem to be serving us pretty well. You know, maybe here are some options for how you could get your needs met, but in a different way, right? Because when the leader says, oh, we should do this, this, and this, there's some needs they're trying to get met. There's some goals they're trying to achieve. They're probably pretty important goals. And it's that this is the tool that they've used in the past to achieve those goals. So that's what they're naturally going to go back to.
Right.
And so, you know, kind of having that conversation about, oh, what are you trying to achieve here with these new policies or this new way you're doing stuff? Oh, you know what? Maybe we could achieve that this other way that would still allow the Scrum teams to function the way they've been functioning recently. So that's one intervention, right? Which of course requires getting time with that person, getting their ear, and you know, and courage, and you know, and courage, because there's real risk, right? There's some chance that this command and control person may be like, oh, I can see you're not on board with the new way, right? And so, you know, the other thing that can be done more locally is figuring out, all right, at what level in the organization is there a leader who can create a bit of an umbrella or a bubble where this stuff can still work? And I have seen that happen, right?
Right.
I have also seen that in those situations, if that person moves on, the bubble usually bursts.
Right, because it's not the organization, it's an individual who's providing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a bottleneck. It just happens to be an organizational bottleneck as opposed to
in my personal experience, when having conversations like that with leadership, since Scrum is empirical, bring empirical data. Show what the value is of what they're doing before. Show what the value is what they're doing after. And if they're, you know, if we're right about what we're doing, then and we're right about the directions that we're going, then it'll show, and it'll make it more palatable for people to understand what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. I was empathizing only with folks who don't have access to the C-suite, perhaps, as they're trying to help make a change. How do they do that? I think one of the things you mentioned, though, Chris, right, is find a champion, somebody who who has a big enough title that they can maybe support those conversations.
Yeah, there's work I've done with groups in situations like that where, oop, I'm gonna get an echo there. I think Ram, I think it's coming through you, so I muted you. I've done some interventions with groups in a situation like that where we start out by brainstorming, like, what are all the possible solutions? And then categorizing them into, we can do it, which means like the people in this room right now could implement this thing. Then the next bucket is, we're going to need internal help, right? There are people we know here in the organization that we're going to need to enlist their help, but we've got relationships with them, and it's this is feasible. Then we're going to need outside help, which could still be people inside the organization, but maybe like we don't know them, we don't have connections with them. Yeah, these people are going to be harder to get a hold of. Or it could be, hey, we need to bring in an expert because we need expertise in something we don't have, right? And then the final bucket is the atoms of the universe cannot be rearranged so that this will happen. And like sorting the things into those buckets can be kind of empowering, because you end up with like, oh, these are things we could do right now to make the situation better. And then, oh yeah, here are some key relationships we need to work on if we want to have a bigger effect. So yeah.
Maybe along the lines of that, it could also be worth it to look at things from the integral perspectives, the
Ooh.
I, the it, the we, and the its.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Pause. All right, continue.
So when you're looking at cause, complaint, and correction, you might want to brainstorm based on these four lenses: leadership and mindset. That's like the I quadrant of the individual internal. The it quadrant, which would be practices and behavior, which would be this sort of individual external quadrant. The its quadrant, which would be about organizational architecture.
Hold it up a little higher now for the bottom quadrants. Perfect. Thank you.
And the last lens would be the we quadrant, where it's about culture and organizational relationships. So applying those four lenses to the three phases, I think, could be an additional good thing to think about.
I love that.
Mhm.
I absolutely love that.
I totally need the title again.
I think
Integral Agile Transformation Framework.
And
I think all,
that's Michael Spade's stuff, right? Do I remember right? Wait, let me spotlight you again. Agile
yeah,
oh, okay, by Michael
Yeah,
Spade.
Michael Spade.
Yeah.
you nailed it. Nelson, you nailed it.
Yeah, really nice, Olaf. Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing.
nice one.
Yeah, it was Michael Spade was the person who worked with Lisa Atkins, right, to start the Agile Coaching Institute. So smart person. Smart person. Other thoughts, comments?
Any more questions to Chris before we wrap it up for tonight? And once?
Oh, this is a time, Chris, for you to plug your office hours.
Oh, that's actually that's a good idea. Oh my goodness. See, where'd you find this guy who's not plugging his stuff? Okay. Let me all right, here we go. Baby, there it is. All right, yeah, every Monday, 3 to 4 p.m. Pacific time, I hold free open office hours. Basically, it's just a, Agile and Scrum discussion group. People show up. They've either got questions they're looking for answers to, or they've just got a topic they'd like to, discuss and hash out with other practitioners. I'm there. There's a cohort of really experienced Agilists who tend to hang out with me. Several of you, right, are regulars there. And so, yeah, come hang out with us. Always a good time and good way to earn, SEUs if you're looking to renew like a Scrum certification or something. Ooh, thanks for that prompt. That was good. Doug is one of our regulars.
It's my therapy of the week.
It's for the cool kids hangout, right?
That's right.
They let me hang out with them too, which is super cool. All right, we now return you to your regularly scheduled meetup. Sasha, I hand the talking stick.
Thank you. I'm taking the talking stick back. Thank you, folks, for choosing to spend this evening with Chris and myself. I'm sure you had other things to do, but it was a pleasure to see you. It's a pleasure to see some regulars, and it's also nice to see some new faces. So I hope that was we are continue getting together. And as I mentioned at the beginning, please mark your calendar, because we are going to have another great guest next month. September 14, we are hosting Bernie Maloney with the topic, what do you really want? Agile at scale or business agility? So please mark your calendar, and I hope to see you in a month. Chris, thank you again for coming, and thank you for your wisdom. It's always nice to see you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And with this,
Sorry,
I am closing the window.
sorry. Sasha, when is this Agile scale at Agile, this session?
Okay, let me find it for you. I hope you are a member of the meetup group.
Yes, I'm the member.
Yeah,
I
so
want to
that
attend.
would be it was advertised through the meetup group.
Okay, sure.
I'll have the link for you momentarily, Sasha.
Yes, I am digging for that right now.
See if I beat you.
Hey, here it is. Oh, thank you.
Hey, thank you.
This one.
Teamwork. Okay, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sasha.
See
Thanks,
you in a
Chris.
month.
You guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.